Hello everyone, and today a History of Italy Walkaround Minidocs is going to Florence.
Buttando il proprio cuore al di là di ogni ostacolo, sapendo con certezza che per sbagliare basta un attimo e non sorprendersi se...
Here we are in front of the Firenze Santa Maria Novella station. We've just arrived with new high-speed train, a trip that used to take a couple of hours, just under one. These modern-looking trains can reach speeds of 250 kilometers per hour, and they come in three lovely colours: red, white and silver. Welcome to Florence, the capital of the Kingdom of Italy. Now, obviously, Florence is no longer the capital of Italy, and there is no Kingdom of Italy. But from 1866 to 1871, Florence was the second capital of the Italian kingdom, after Turin first and then later Rome. Here we are in the Piazza della Signoria, from where the dukes, the Medici dukes of Florence, governed the city.
Cantala, questa canzone cantala.
There has been human settlement in this area ever since prehistoric times, but the first significant town was built in 150 BC by the Etruscans. It was given the name Florentia in Latin, showing that already then the Romans were having a great influence in the area. It probably comes from the Latin word for fertile, Florentes. It went through successive waves of Goths, Lombards, Byzantines and Franks, and in the year 1115 it became one of the many independent Italian communes. But perhaps the most notable period of the city's history was in the Renaissance, il Rinascimento, when the Medici dukes attracted such great artists as Brunelleschi, Michelangelo, Botticelli and Leonardo da Vinci. We're here now in the courtyard of the Uffizi Gallery, a building commissioned by Cosimo de' Medici in the 15th century to house the offices, the Uffizi of the magistrates. Cosimo de' Medici built this at the height of the Medici power. They had come from a relatively mild-mannered banking family in the 12th century to become the lords, the signori, the dukes of Florence. Now these buildings house some of the most important and most beautiful works of art in human history. After making it through the security check, we make our way up the majestic staircase and find ourselves in the beautifully decorated ancient halls of the Uffizi Gallery. And soon we start to see some of the images that we have seen over and over all of our lives. And we find famous maestros such as Raphael with his bittersweet Madonna looking happily upon a child that she doesn't yet know she will have to lose. And more violent images such as Caravaggio's Medusa shield, and of course Botticelli with his Spring and the world-famous Birth of Venus. And a pig, because, well, it's always good to have a pig. We spent a bit more time looking at certain paintings, not because of the naked ladies, but because they seem to be communicating to us. We also learn something from the sculptures. This is the child of Hermes and Aphrodite, Hermaphrodite, whose bisexuality is based on the union with the nymph Salmacis, who asks the gods to be united forever in the same body in eternal love. Here we are in Piazza del Duomo, Cathedral Square, and behind me you can see the Florence Cathedral. The cathedral was started in the 13th century, the beginning of the 13th century, but the dome was built later in the 15th century, designed by Brunelleschi. You can also see Giotto's bell tower, and as with any city in Italy, there are a lot of churches. Today we even caught a wedding. Moving inside Brunelleschi's dome, which is the largest in the world and the largest ever built in masonry, you could admire the beautiful frescoes started by Giorgio Vasari and completed by Federico Zuccari, depicting Judgment Day. As we mentioned before, in Florence, like in all of Italy, there are a lot of churches. That's a church. That is also a church. That's a church. That's a church. And that is also a church with a pretty yet rather odd dancing person. Having had our fill of churches, it was time to cross the river and start thinking about a little bit of lunch, but not before we admired Ponte Vecchio. Here we are standing on Ponte Vecchio, which sounds fancy, but it actually just means old bridge. There's been a bridge here in this position ever since Roman times, but that obviously burned down. And the current bridge used to house butchers. Now, as you can see, it's mostly jewelers. Now, all that walking around and visiting got us a bit hungry, so it was time to stop for a couple of crostini and, of course, a good glass of wine. By the start of the 16th century, the Medici family were getting to be pretty big stuff. So it was time to buy a little place just on the other side of the river, maybe with a patch of garden. So they bought this. The building you see here is Palazzo Pitti, which, as well as being a famous Medici home, is also well known for fashion. We move into the courtyard. And then finally get a look at that little patch of garden we mentioned. Just a bit of green for the kids to mess around on, of course. You can also find some rather odd-looking statues, with the occasional special guest. And a pond for a bit of a paddle. As evening draws close, we go to visit the museum of one of the city's most illustrious inhabitants, Leonardo da Vinci. In this museum, you can see models, working models, of some of his most interesting inventions. Here we are at the end of our day, and this is one of the reasons that you come to Florence, the Florentine T-bone steak. So, while I take care of this, I'd like to say goodbye, thank you for watching, and until the next A History of Italy Walkaround Minidocs.
Ma leggimi l'anima, non è così difficile, non è impossibile, non è così difficile, non è impossibile, basta solo stringersi e non guardare mai giù, mai.